So today I'm really excited to give you some feedback on what happened in session 1 on Wednesday and session 2 on Thursday. And then we had a really nice poster hall as well. Everything is right now available online. Session 1 and 2 live events recordings are available on the YouTube channel of GEO Blue Planet, but it will also be available on the events page by early next week. And the poster hall is on Miro. I will start first with the poster hall. So this is a word cloud, or maybe I should call it a word wave, of the different titles of the 50 posters we got from in the poster hall. These 50 posters are covering 4 sessions. We have one session on transdisciplinary approaches, one session on monitoring technologies and modeling, one session on networks, and one session on the digital ecosystems. We had over 200 registrations, and the poster hall will stay open until the 30th of November. So you still have a week to go there and to interact with our authors, poster authors. If this works, this is a really quick demo on how the poster hall works. So you guys can go enjoy it this afternoon after the presentations. Can you hear the sound when I play the video, Stefano?
Yes.
Okay, good.
I do.
I had this issue in a previous session. Here we go.
Okay. Shall I start?
So you can move around. This is the demo video for the Imdos satellite event, virtual poster board on the Miro software.
There are some chats who says they cannot listen to the...
You land on this page if you have clicked on the poster hall button on the website. You cannot hear it, or you can hear it? Or if you have copied and pasted this URL you cannot into hear your browser.
I do, but now they can listen to. Oh, now it works. Looks like.
Lillian, can you jump in, please, and tell me if people can hear the video?
We can see video, but no sound.
We can hear it if you just press play. When you press play, we can hear it.
Okay, but Nikolai just said we can't. I'm confused. I will try to turn the sound up. I'm the satellite event, virtual poster board on the Miro software. So you land on this page if you have clicked on the poster hall button on our website, or if you have copied and pasted this URL into your browser. So you can move around by just clicking, grabbing, and moving the posters around like this. If you want to have a look at a specific poster, you can either put your hand over it and scroll in it, or you can also double click it and it will arrive right there on this poster. That's really nice because this very colorful poster, we can read everything that is written. If we want to go further into it, we can go all the way here. So that's really nice. And if you want to ask a question to Catherine, who wrote this poster, you can just click on comment to the left of your screen. Click in the Ask the Author area. Ask your question. And here it is. If you also want to see all the list of the different posters, you can click on this frames button to the left, the bottom left, and you can go through all the different posters. Another way of looking at the different posters is to click on presentation mode. And then it will take you to the nearest poster, which was apparently this one. And then you can just click at the bottom to the next one. And you can, like this, travel across the virtual poster hall. If you have a video, you can just click on it once and then click on it a second time once it's the YouTube button appears. If, like this one, the zooming is not sufficient, you can still zoom into the poster and see more details. You can exit this mode, and just by clicking to the number of percentage to the bottom right corner, you can zoom back to 100% and zoom out to travel again around your virtual poster hall. Thank you very much. All right, so I hope I will see you. This is the demo video for the... Go next slide, so nothing moves. I hope this video will help you join us on the virtual poster hall, and we are welcoming any questions and comments. That would be great. Then I just want to go really quickly on the two different sessions we had. We had the first session on Wednesday, which aim was strengthening the scientific knowledge. We had a great introduction on plastic from the Great Arundel group. Then a presentation on the impact of marine debris on wildlife and fisheries. Then the marine debris monitoring for global policy by UNEP. And then a really good presentation from our colleague from the European Commission on the single-use plastic ban and the monitoring that led to it. We had then a really nice discussion with our moderator and the different speakers. And some of the highlights are here. We had speakers saying that we need to understand how to identify positive and negative changes without knowing the baseline, and that's why we need more monitoring. Sometimes methods cannot be applied to different locations because of cost, access to technology, facilities, and we need to find ways in which research can generate different data. And this data need to be valuable and useful for everyone else. And my last quote is, technological advances and growth of citizen science are improving the detection of marine litter, but consistency of measurements remains a challenge. So these are, to me, the key messages. And then we had yesterday session 2. It was more of a, I call it the speed dating session, because we had 11 5-minute presentation. It was really interesting. I presented first the usual suspects of monitoring, and then we had new monitoring capacities from the sources of plastic, the inputs to the ocean, the state-of-the-art monitoring, and we finished with François Galgani giving us an overview of the challenges around extreme events that we need to take into account. So yes, everything is available online. This is our website, but you know this website because this is where you clicked on the register button. And now it's a great pleasure for me to transfer the moderation to Stefano. He will be moderating this session today, and this is the list of the different talk. Just to remind everyone that you can ask questions in your Q&A button, and that you can access the French translation by just clicking on interpretation. Thank you very much. And Stefano, the floor is yours now.
Thank you, Audrey. And good morning, everybody, speakers and attendees. And welcome to this third section of the One Integrated Marine Debris Observing System event into the UN Decade satellite events. This section objective is to define the future of IMDOS. So we will spend some time getting information from the speakers, and then we will have a discussion that I hope will be very, very active and full of good new ideas. So the session will be divided in two parts. The first one will be before the coffee break and then the coffee break. So I encourage people to stay on time and have their talk within 8 minutes as scheduled. I raise a hand at 5 minutes to give a gently reminder that your time is passing by. And so the first talk will be from Manuel Arias Ballesteros from Argans, UK, and is addressing the gap between in situ and remotely sensed observations. Manuel, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'm going to share my screen, my presentation. Okay. Thank you, Stefano, for the introduction. Not mention this. Okay, very good. So the talk that I'm going to give today is related in how remote sensing, and particularly satellite remote sensing, can help to fill the gaps existing in the in situ data in order to complete the map of marine plastic debris around the oceans. The first thing I want to mention about this is that remote sensing, and particularly what we are calling aerial remote sensing, can only report about the fraction of the marine litter that it is floating in the oceans. The rest, it is typically going to the water column or to the seafloor, and therefore is not affordable in terms of detection from aerial platforms. And this means that we can only observe with it around 6,000 to 245,000 metric tons of plastic that is arriving to the ocean every year. Still, floating plastic is an environmental indicator of marine plastic pollution, and it could be possible to elaborate models that link the presence of floating marine debris with a total quantity of debris present in a given area. One of the questions of why we need remote sensing to help in this problem is that models are quite constrained in terms of their outputs on the availability of in situ observations or data that can be ingested into the models in order to produce accurate outputs. In this slide, in the left image, we can see one publication from Vanceville from some years ago now, in which he highlighted that models can differ between them in an order of magnitude of 10 or even 100 as a scaling factor, which it means that there is a substantial difference in the output of models. And quite often this is linked to the type of data that has been ingested in them. So there is need to fill the models with more data coming from remote sensing. The other reason why we need remote sensing and has been addressed in previous talks, in the previous sessions, is that remote sensing can provide information on areas where modeling will be difficult or will not work properly. So we are talking about extreme events, as has been mentioned, hotspots that are at scales that ocean modeling is not able to reproduce, or even areas like beaches and coastal borders that are typically very difficult to represent properly in models. Remote sensing can provide this type of near real-time observations and be able to inform quickly to end users and the scientific community about particular problems in terms of contamination that might not be represented by other means. However, it's not, of course, the magic tool. Remote sensing has limitations, particularly satellite remote sensing, in the sense that addressing the detection of the marine debris from space is especially challenging, taking into account the varied nature of the floating marine debris, which embraces a large distribution of different spatial scales in terms of sizes of the targets, so microplastics or large single items or large accumulations, respect also to their spatial resolution of the different sensors that we are trying to use. In addition, the varied nature of composition of the marine debris makes also difficult this detection, along with the mixing with natural occurring substances or materials like seaweeds or phytoplankton. I'm going to put now some examples of what is being done with remote sensing currently, and this is one example from a publication from Kikaki et al. In 2020, where using Sentinel-2 data, they achieved to detect accumulations or rafts of floating marine debris containing substantial quantities of plastic in the area of Caribbean Sea. And they developed a methodology that is able to report on this information at scales up to 10 meters. This was done using optical data from Sentinel-2. Also using Sentinel-2, and this is a study of myself and some other people are also involved in this organization, in which we are using also Sentinel-2 to detect what we are calling proxies of marine litter, which essentially is trying to identify rafts of floating debris of different nature, which we know has a high probability of containing plastics. And in this case, what we are doing is to combine spectral information coming from the satellite with artificial intelligence elements in order to produce both a spectral and contextual classification to identify this type of filament successfully. In addition to it, more recently, is being developed technologies to use thermal infrared, which is able to detect floating plastics in the sea surface by the impact they have in the heat transfer between ocean and atmosphere, with the advantage that this technique works during the day and during the night. And also some years ago, some of the first studies that was published in terms of satellite remote sensing of marine debris, very high resolution satellites can be used also to monitor and detect marine litter presence or accumulated on coastal areas and beaches, which is a strong advantage with respect to other technologies. This is also possible, of course, with drones, but satellites can give a more systematic and routine monitoring capability over much larger areas than drones can do. As a final example, also recently, there are some studies that are trying to exploit the reflected signal from GPS sensors, satellites, to try to inform about the presence of accumulations of microplastics in the ocean. This is still an ongoing research, and so there is still a very good road in front of us in order to really achieve something using this type of technology. But it is promising and could inform about something that some other sources cannot. And to finish the list of examples, the synthetic aperture radar, along with artificial intelligence, can also be used to report on the floating marine debris by using training systems that benefit from optical data too. And this is a recent example of the GR presented in IGAS. And just to do a quick summary, the remote sensing technologies are the solely affordable tools able to provide systematic observations of marine plastic litter at global scale and in variable time scales. It complements in situ observations, which are always necessary, and bridges the gap in data supporting the modeling effort. Remote sensing could inform of plastic litter using sensors from kilometric spatial resolution to centimetric spatial resolution, like satellites to drones. And similarly, remote sensing could prove able to inform in multiple plastic fractions and accumulations, but having in mind that satellite-based solutions are unlikely to report on individual items rather than densities or concentrations. Of course, no technology is perfect, so with some of the technology related to remote sensing being particularly challenging or having specific limitations. For instance, optical remote sensing can only operate during the day and with no clouds. Current results from satellites are still not mature for operational purposes. There is need of significant research and development effort yet. And to conclude, just to inform the community that there is an ongoing task force organized by the IOCCP that is focused on this topic of remote sensing marine litter, and it counts with the support of the space agencies, CSIRO, NASA, ISRO, and JAXA. It is scientifically led by Shumu Garaba from the University of Edinburgh and has been organized with the help of myself, Laurent Bierman, François Regis, Martin Lucer, and Victor Martinez Vicente, which have been also participating along other of the sessions and meetings. And with that, I conclude my meeting. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Manuel. If you have any question for Manuel, please use the Q&A button on the button at the bottom of your screen. And now it's a pleasure to invite Nikolai Maximenko to give his presentation about the link between marine debris observation and modeling. Nikolai, please, the floor is yours. I cannot hear you. You are muted.
Sorry. Yeah, as I'm sharing the screen, just let me also to add that Manuel is a lead on our partner event that goes the same week. There will be 2 more sessions on Friday, right, Manuel? And there is a long-term collaboration and partnership between Imdos team and the remote sensing task force. Very good job, very good progress. Okay, thank you very much. Can you see my slide?
Yes, please.
Okay, good. So remote sensing, in situ observations, and modeling, they form a kind of triad that is critical for successful comprehensive observance system. As Manuel already presented remote sensing, I will focus on observations and modeling. I think nobody will argue that collaboration between measurements and models is important, but I want just to amplify, to emphasize this collaboration using my own experience in my studies. So nothing can replace observations. Most of discoveries are done by observers. You need to travel there and to discover it yourself. Even if a system is well developed, nothing can replace observations, the in situ observations in the role of ground truthing. On the other hand, models, they help to generalize, to interpolate, extrapolate, and also to understand to understand the signal revealed by observations. For already several years, there are many projects combining sparse observations with some models and trying to close the budget. As Manuel showed on his slide, if we put together source patterns, observed patterns, and sinks, we still don't have our budget closed. And actually, we don't know if it's because we are missing something in the water, hiding in the water column or on the ocean floor, or maybe we don't know all dissipations. We overestimate lifetime of plastic in the ocean, or maybe we overestimate the sources. There are so many huge error bars. But as we continue pushing this balance to perfect, we are actually facing some more urgent tasks. People cannot wait for us, and every day hundreds of cleanup groups, they remove debris from rivers, from beaches, and entities from NGOs to United Nations. They are moving on with ambitious plans. As UN Sustainable Development Goal, it suggests to significantly remove marine debris by 2025. So there are actions that different groups, projects undertake, and these actions, they need to be supported by science and observations. We need to know if these actions actually work, and we expect some results by 2025, but they have to beat this long-term trend that was earlier published by starting from Captain Charles Moore, who discovered the great garbage patch in the North Pacific and then observed accumulation of debris in this garbage patch, and Laurent Leverton, who used model to extract a long-term trend. And this fast increase is not surprising because it's consistent with exponential growth of production of plastic. What is surprising is when already before 2025, in our days, we already received some signs of some similarly good news. For example, recently, Amy Urin and co-authors published in Nature Communication results of analysis of derelict fishing gear north of Hawaii based on local long-line fisheries. And they demonstrated that over 6 years, amount of fishing gear decreased 3 times. This is amazing, partly because nearly at the same time, Charles Moore continued screaming that garbage patch is growing. And on this map, you can see 2 locations. So can it be just because fishing nets are different from fragmented plastic, or can it be because of some different reason? So we suspect that this is because of the ocean dynamics, and we use our model, and this model shows that during this reported period, interesting thing happened. Garbage patch demonstrates many modes of variability, and during those years, center of the garbage patch was moving from southwest to northeast, from fisheries area to Charles Moore area. And I want to say that this model that we were using, we know that we ran it under constant force. There is no trend, no change, no major change in the model. So this tells us that we need to be really cautious when analyzing these observed signals, because big part of this signal can be due to the ocean dynamic. And I want to finish with another illustration. This is ongoing collaboration with Megan Lamson and Carl Berg, who are leading Hawaii Wildlife Fund on Big Island, and the Surfrider Foundation Kauai chapter. So by now they collected large volume of reports from Hawaiian beaches, from all 4 main Hawaiian islands. And on this diagram, you can see how timeline is actually pretty complex. Between 2015 and 2018, there was ascending trend and then sharp descending trend. And what is remarkable is that this trend is consistent also with predictions of our model, with diagnosis of our model. And the reason for that is because Hawaii is so far from major sources of plastic, so that before plastic comes to Hawaii, it goes through major ocean variability. It goes mostly into the garbage patch, and it spills towards Hawaii is controlled partly and largely by ocean and atmosphere dynamics. So again, this is my conclusion, is that we need to be really careful when analyzing complex timelines, and we expect complex timelines. But I also want to say that this is not just like models are helping observations. To combine observations with models, we need good models. And to get good models, to be confident that models are adequate, we again need observations. So this is kind of long-term task, long-term dancing together. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nikolai. Very nice talk and interesting. And if you have questions for Nikolai, please use the Q&A window on your Zoom page. Now it's a pleasure to invite Denise Hardesty from CSIRO to talk about integrating citizen science, citizen scientist observations. Denise, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Stefano. And can I just confirm that you can see the full screen view?
Yes, I do.
Super. Thank you. Well, it's actually an ideal setup. So thank you so much, Manuel and Nikolai. It was a perfect prelude to what I will be talking about, which is really the role of citizen science.
Denise, I'm sorry,
Yes.
this is Audrey. We cannot see it in presentation mode. It's more like,
Okay.
yeah, like edition mode, I would say.
Okay.
If you click on that button, maybe again, the slideshow button.
I have just done that.
Yeah, sometimes it needs.
Well, in the interest of time, unfortunately, I may go ahead and just go this way. My sincere apologies, and hope that this will be sufficient for everyone.
We can see everything, it's fine.
Someone is saying that you may share the wrong screen. If you have double screens, you are probably sharing the wrong screen.
Yes, I'm sure that is the case. However, in the interest of time, unfortunately, I'm just going to continue.
Yeah.
And I'm actually going to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land where I am calling in from. I'm based in Hobart, Tasmania, which is the land of the Murawina people, who have been the traditional custodians over land and sea for generations. And I just want to start by acknowledging their custodianship and continued connection to land and sea, and moving forward from there. And I'm just going to, hopefully be able to move to my next slide.
Page down, yes.
Yep, yes. So we often look at and think about ways that people are able to contribute data to this huge body of knowledge that we seek, because it is such a big, vast ocean out there in the marine debris realm. And we often focus efforts on land. And so we may be looking at rather dirty sites like was showing here, but I'm having a little bit of trouble with slides, so apologies for that, or microplastics in the ocean. And we may be working with school groups, we may be working with a number of different types of volunteer participants to contribute to these large data sets. And I think one of the things, I still seem to be having difficulty. Are the slides moving along, or are you still only seeing the front slide?
You went forward and back. So go to the next one.
Yep, okay.
Page down.
Yep.
Doesn't change.
Yep, okay.
Yes, that's it.
Unfortunately, I'm seeming to be having a little bit of difficulty because I have some animations, but they're not working at the moment. So be that as it may. What we have seen are sort of two main components where the marine debris community has been engaged deeply with volunteers. And one is for a rather tremendous data set, which has been led by Cara Lavender Law and the Woods Hole team, in which citizen scientist students have been collecting surface trawl data for microplastics over decades, separating out that data and that information, which has been used in a number of very high-level and influential publications that really point to where and what types of changes are we seeing in floating surface microplastics. At the other end of the spectrum, we've also started to see an increase in large-scale global analyses of other types of citizen science data, such as from the Ocean Conservancy's International Coastal Cleanup data set, as well as from Patty Dive-Aware's citizen scientist efforts to quantify and to collect data and to remove litter from the seabed floor. And so what we're seeing are a wide array of areas in which citizen scientists are able to contribute. And what we're really starting to see now is a fundamental change and a new opportunity, which really relates to the marine debris observation systems and the preview work that Manuel and Nikolai have mentioned. And that is around the opportunity for individuals that are volunteers. And remember, these individuals that are contributing, they are and may be professionals in a number of different contexts. However, they may just be donating their time for a topic that they feel particularly passionate about. In the area that we're starting to see a huge opportunity for observation systems, for remote sensing and other things, is really around developing and training models for object recognition. And the object in the case, you know, the figure that I show here, this is focusing on cars. However, in this particular area, we're seeing a huge number of participants that are starting to contribute data through object recognition and labeling images, which we use to train models for trash or litter or plastic pollution detection. And right now, it certainly depends upon whether you're using Sentinel data or other satellite data. Some of the challenges that were mentioned before are certainly relevant. However, it is an opportunity where with training, participants can recognize objects. If the objects are labeled correctly, consistently, and appropriately, then we can use those objects to train the models to be able to get a better understanding and to collect much larger masses, volumes, and high quality information of things such as not only where is trash on land, but where is trash and what types of debris are floating down our water courses, rivers, creeks, and streams. And there are a few different efforts afoot. We have been working on this as well as some other people, where we're actually placing cameras in water courses and using artificial intelligence with the support of trained participants or volunteers to develop automatic litter detection systems. You know, and we have also seen at the national and global scale images such as this, which are collected by volunteer trained citizen scientists to contribute their data. I think it is really important for us to be thinking about, as we look at the global network and this global platform, that what we're trying to do is to marry our empirical observations and our model predictions. And as Nikolai pointed out, it's quite an important opportunity to be able to ground truth our models. So if we measure it, we can start to manage it, we can make policy decisions, we can build that international community. I think that one of the key points that's really important or relevant for us to remember is that no matter whether you're talking about a professional trained scientist or a very keen citizen scientist volunteer, to get the best data, we simply need and want to spend the time to train the participants. And we are at a point with our analyses and analytical tools that even when data are noisy because of variability in citizen science contributions and skill level and attention to detail at times, we do have appropriate statistical approaches that we can use so that we can weight trained observers with different levels, that we can build that into our models and analyses so that we can be quite certain of the level of uncertainty, if that makes sense, that we have. And I think that provides a really great opportunity and way to utilize and get the most out of the really valuable contributions of citizen scientists. And at the moment, there's a new global effort afoot. There are a few different programs whereby volunteers are using apps, they're collecting information, they're labeling objects that can then be used in these model predictions that can be applied to Sentinel-1 or remote sensing data and other large-scale data sets from around the world. And I will pause there and say I think it's a really exciting opportunity to engage with citizens of the world to contribute to this information as we're looking to build out such a large integrated system and to really engage with the public in meaningful ways. I think the last thing to mention is that it's quite important to provide feedback to continue to have the high level of dedication from volunteers, and there's a number of ways to do that. And I will pause there. Thank you.
Thank you, Denise. And a special thanks also to all the volunteers who did this incredible, huge work. So again, if you have questions for Denise, please use the Q&A window at the bottom of your screen. Now it's time for a break. We are on schedule. So we will meet again at 10 to 10. So 10 minutes before 10, we will meet again. We start the section again. So we can have a short break now. Okay. Time is ready. We are ready. I don't know. I don't see people connected. Yes, thank you. Yes, people is slowly getting back. Let's wait for some extra time to allow people to connect again after the coffee. Oh, sorry. Yes, yeah, be better. Let's wait for people's coffees, few minutes. Yes, works. So how many people is back? Not many. So.
I think we can go, Stefano.
Okay.
It's good.
Yes. Okay. So let's start again. Thank you very much for following the first section, the first part of the section. Now we start the second part of the section. We begin with the communication from Isobe-san from Kyushu University in Japan. And it's about the harmonization of marine plastic litter monitoring and database in Japan. Isobe-san, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Stefano-san. Today, in this presentation, I have 3 keywords regarding the ocean plastic monitoring implementation in Japan. So one is the database of microplastic worldwide. And the second is the operational monitoring of ocean plastic by Ministry of Environment Japan, MOEJ, throughout this presentation. And third is the abyssal ocean plastic dataset operated by JAMSTEC. We appreciate this opportunity to present our efforts, and hopefully our efforts will become the future contribution of IMDOS. Okay, skip. And since, regarding the database, our start was an international follow-up workshop to the G7 Elmos Summit in 2015, where an agreement was that Japan would take the leadership in harmonizing the monitoring methods for ocean surface microplastics. Since then, MOEJ has been working on harmonizing monitoring methods and data sharing to understand global abundance distribution of ocean surface microplastics. The key outcome of this project was the development of guideline on harmonization of sampling and analytical methods, and the next milestone is launching the database. You will deeply understand the situation that the monitoring method of ocean microplastic was not well harmonized 10 years before, using different protocols for sampling and different metrics unit to measure abundance. So it was difficult to compare and synthesize the abundance data obtained by different researchers. The guideline freely available on the MOEJ website and IODE's Ocean Best Practice website were written by 25 international experts, and Professor Yutaka Michida, University of Tokyo, was the lead author. The guideline was specialized for harmonizing methodology to monitor the microplastic abundance at the ocean surface. To make the guideline, we have conducted additional surveys and inter-laboratory comparison exercise, but I'd like to skip the details. This is an overview of the method listed in the guideline. You can see that this tune on the MOEJ's website. So based on the guideline, MOEJ started the monitoring data sharing project. This project was motivated by the G20 workshop on harmonized monitoring and data comparison of marine plastic litter in September 2020. Endorsed by the Ocean Decade, MOEJ is running a project on the development of database on ocean surface microplastics, which will have advantage of as shown in this slide. This project objective is to establish a global hub to share the information and compile monitoring data of ocean surface microplastics. MOEJ is seeking for partnerships such as international organizations or programs for collaboration to drive this project and to exchange the collected data. I'd like to move the content of our ongoing database project. This is a two-dimensional mapping project of surface microplastic abundance worldwide. At the present time, more than 8,000 data exist as shown in the left panel, but are insufficient to cover the entire world ocean. In our research project, the data were converted to vertically integrated abundance in the entire water column to remove the influence of vertical mixing induced by wind and waves under the stormy oceanic conditions as shown in the upper right panel. Moreover, as shown in the lower right panel, the data were converted to weight from particle count to compare with laboratory-based studies on marine organisms exposed to small plastic debris. Thereafter, these data for microplastic abundance were gridded over the entire ocean to be understandable for users, including researchers, policymakers, and students. We have a plan to open the database on the internet by MOEJ as a microplastic database friendly for diverse stakeholders, including policymakers, NLPs, as well as researchers. Now this data is open publicly as information, supplementary information of our published data. Okay, and now let us touch briefly on surveys on marine litter surveys of marine litter organized by MOEJ. MOEJ has organized survey on marine litter on beaches in the coastal waters around Japan and the western North Pacific Oceans. For example, survey for approximately 100 sites per year using 5 vessels have been conducted for surface microplastic in the offshore waters with the cooperation for 4 universities in Japan since 2017. The surveys are conducted in line with the guideline mentioned before, and data are all included in the database, have already all included in the database. Okay. And Jamstack operates the database called Deep Sea Debris Database as shown in the left. All images have been taken by ROV or Human Occupied Vehicle HOV of Jamstack since 1983 and were analyzed to record the debris information in the database. The database contained more than 3-year record or deep sea debris from more than 5,000 dives, and they have over 3,005 man-made debris items to date. Right map shows the location where at least one item of man-made debris was found. The bar chart stated a single-use plastic accounted for 90% of the total plastic debris. The ratio of plastic to total debris increased with depth with the highest ratio at depth greater than 600,000 meters or 1,000 meters. From the database, they found that the maximum depth record of plastic debris was the plastic bag in Mariana Trench at 11 kilometer depth. This is the world record of plastic debris found to date. Okay, this is the file. So Jamstack recently investigated the crucial extension recirculation area of the east coast of Japan. A large number of plastic debris generated in Asia is expected to accumulate on the sea surface, on this sea surface. On the seafloor just below the area with a depth of approximately 3,000 meters, Jamstack conducted video observation of physical sampling using the HOV. The Shinkai 6500 shown in the lower left. The upper right photo showed that the majority of the debris was single-use plastic such as plastic bags and food packaging. They found the food packaging dating back to September 1984, meaning it was 35 years old. At the time of collection, the package in this image looks very fresh. This is an interesting example of the persistence of plastic debris in deep sea environment where the water temperature is low and UV radiation is completely negligible. This means a number of plastic was approximately 3,005 pieces per square kilometer in this region, which was 2 orders of magnitude higher than the previous estimate on abyssal seafloor. The value was also higher than those recorded for depression features such as trench and submarine canyons. So the research team considered that the deep sea basin in the Western North Pacific may be a significant reservoir of the plastic debris. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Isobe-san, for the very interesting presentation of Japan activities on the observing of plastics in the ocean, shallow and deep. Now we go into the global observing system. Artur Palacz is going to introduce us how GOOS, Global Ocean Observing System, may support IMDOS. Please, Artur, the floor is yours.
I think I need Isobe-san to stop sharing the screen before I can upload my presentation.
True. Isobe, can you please stop sharing, Isobe-san? Yes, thank you very much. Now you probably can.
I'm very sorry.
No problem. Okay, hopefully you can see my screen now.
Yes.
Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Artur Palacz. I'm a project officer of the International Ocean Carbon Coordination Project, GOOS Biogeochemistry Panel of Experts. And in this brief presentation, I want to highlight how the Global Ocean Observing System GOOS intends to and has already started to support the implementation of the community's ambitious vision for Imdos. So for those of you not familiar with GOOS, it's a program of the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission, IOC, part of UNESCO, co-sponsored also by WMO, UN Environment Program, and the International Science Council. Since 1991, GOOS has been working towards a sustained and integrated global system of ocean observations by leading and supporting a community of international, regional, and national ocean observing programs, governments, UN agencies, research institutions, and very importantly, individual scientists. The GOOS approach to coordination of ocean observations spans a number of steps in the ocean observing value chain, which is described by the Framework for Ocean Observing. The scientific and policy requirements provide the basis for how to design and set implementation targets for a large network of ocean observing platforms, which monitor open, coastal, and deep ocean, and deliver data for climate, operational services, and ocean health applications. This myriad of platforms includes ship-based, fixed-point, autonomous, and remote sensing, among a growing number of other types of platforms. So ultimately, our goal is to increase the readiness level of the observing system from concept to mature, and this effort is organized around essential ocean variables, which include those measurements whose impact and feasibility is high enough to justify their long-term monitoring investment on a global scale. While current EOVs, as you can see here on the top right corner, are specific to physics, biogeochemistry, and biology, GOOS recognizes that this concept should be expanded onto measurable indicators of human pressures and cultural and economic aspects of the ocean. So therefore, a marine plastics debris EOV is already under development. So at this point, I think it's useful to remind ourselves what the Imdos vision actually calls for. And here, as published in the Ocean Ops 19 Community White Paper, in brief, it calls for remote sensing, integration of remote sensing and in situ observations, use of models to continuously optimize the design of the monitoring system, interaction with other observing systems, engagement of volunteer and citizen science initiatives, establishing best practices and harmonized methodologies, or enabling synthesized data to support research and user needs. And incidentally, it also calls for identification of relevant essential ocean variables. So in line with our GOOS 2030 strategy and in response to strong recommendations from the ocean observing community, GOOS has obtained some initial funds to develop capacity and coordination for sustained global observations of marine plastics. As part of a broader EU innovation project on ocean observing EuroSea, which is coordinated by Toste Tanua, co-chair of GOOS, we developed an initial GOOS action plan to support Imdos. And we continue to update this plan based on close consultations with many organizations, groups, and individual experts, many of whom are present here today, I think. Apart from the efforts to synthesize the requirements as part of the Marine Plastics Debris EOV, some key activities in the action plan would include augmenting and harmonizing existing sampling protocols, for example, to allow debris observations from vessels servicing moorings, ships of opportunities, or visual surveys, visual biodiversity surveys. Also promoting a coordinated network for surface floating plastics, which would be integrated within GOOS structures, matching in situ capacity with satellite product development needs, supporting the Gpml digital platform, and last but least, establishing global coordination of Imdos in partnership with many experts and leading authorities around marine debris. So for us, the first important step towards realizing the action plan was to foster discussions around different threads of Imdos. And we did that by co-convening a Marine Litter Working Group during the 4th Annual Ocean Best Practices System Workshop, which took place in September 2020. So this workshop gathered a large group of international experts who led 7 thematic sessions focused on discussing global policy, monitoring, modeling, remote sensing, and data management, among other topics. I want to specifically zoom in on one session which considered a variety of constraints when recommending and adopting common methodologies for marine litter monitoring and assessments, which was based on the recommendations from 2019 report from GSAMP Working Group 40. So the session recommended, for example, elaborating formal guidelines for global scale marine litter indicators and organizing technical workshops to harmonize approaches and protocols, and very importantly, also define the best possible approaches to manage the data. A possible short listing of these global scale indicators included surface floating microplastics and seafloor litter, on which I want to focus in the next 2 slides, because these are the 2 domains in which I think GOOS support can be particularly valuable. So as just presented by Isobe-san, there have been tremendous developments in Japan with regard to harmonizing methods and sharing data from global surface floating microplastic observations. And we are very interested and just started to discuss with MOG and Japanese colleagues if and how we can support these efforts. We see potential in working towards coordinated observing network for surface floating plastics, which would have, among other things, the goals to help expand the scope and spatiotemporal coverage of these observations, for example, by integrating within the Ship of Opportunity program or other networks, help track the status of who is actually measuring what and where through sharing standardized survey metadata globally, and also accommodate the growing interest among the sailing community to contribute to ocean observations of microplastics. And I think the value of integrating plastics monitoring with Ships of Opportunity was also nicely demonstrated by Laurent for floating macroplastics in yesterday's session. So building global coordination of monitoring and data management of surface floating, I think can strongly benefit from lessons learned by the ocean carbon observing community, where data synthesis products such as the Surface Ocean CO2 Atlas, which is regularly supplied by coordinated observing networks and a community of research experts, actually regularly informs global carbon budgets and thus also the IPCC climate assessment reports. And I'm also looking forward to hearing from Bronte about some other lessons learned from the ocean acidification community on how we can maybe use that as a potential model for Imdos as a whole. Another thing I want to mention is the coupling of coastal biodiversity and seafloor litter monitoring as another example where GOOS, through the EuroSea project, is trying to make an impact. Next week, actually, we're convening an online workshop towards a coordinated European observing system for marine macroalgae, which will include sessions dedicated to opportunities for integration with litter monitoring, both from visual methods such as scuba diving or ROV surveys, but also remote sensing product development. And this work directly addresses gaps and follows recommendations from guidance on monitoring of marine litter in European seas. But considering that GOOS efforts to establish a global network for macroalgae as well as seagrass monitoring, I see prospects for further aligning standard sampling protocols and shared survey designs to happen on a global scale within a few years' time. So I want to finish with saying that the importance of developing Imdos has been acknowledged by UNEP and GEO Blue Planet in their joint white paper, suggesting that a future Imdos would essentially play the role of a backbone observing system, which would offer unified access to a vast majority of marine debris data, which is acquired from space and in situ, and which then helps delivers indicators and decision support tools via the Gpml digital platform. So I know that in a few minutes, Marta will speak more about the platform specifically, but I just want to conclude by saying that we in GOOS really look forward to further discussing with UNEP and other partners how GOOS can best support Imdos and the Gpml platform at the same time, so that we really strengthen the scientific knowledge which is needed to address marine debris pollution. Thank you.
You're welcome, Artur. Again, questions in the Q&A button at the bottom. Now we are looking forward to listen to what happened in the ocean acidification world. So it's time for the talk from Bronte Tilbrook from CSIRO, who will tell us the lesson learned from the observing network for global ocean acidification, the GOA on. Please, Bronte, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm not sure I've got lessons learned. We're still learning them. But I can tell you what we've done to develop a network, and I think it's considered reasonably successful. I want to acknowledge, though, that it's underpinned by partnerships with a number of organisations, and in particular the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission of UNESCO, the Ocean Acidification Program of NOAA, and the International Atomic Energy Agency's International Coordination Centre for Ocean Acidification. They support the Secretariat for GOON, of which I'm a member, and it's where I'm a member of the network. And the Secretariat's been critical for us to develop some of the things that I'll go through in the next few slides. Can I have the next slide, please? So GOON grew out of concerns about ocean acidification or changing ocean chemistry and the impacts on marine life and biodiversity. And it's really focused around understanding or monitoring the changes in ocean acidification, the biological impacts, and making that data available both to the science community and to the public and decision makers. Next, please. The initial startup of GOON was in 2012, so it's less than 10 years old. There were 60 people that attended a meeting in Seattle and set up the initial requirements for monitoring and data delivery. And since then, there have been a number of key meetings, in-person meetings listed here, where different aspects of GOON have been developed, and including things like regional hubs and capacity building, which I'll give some examples of soon. And these have been really critical, but there's a lot of other meetings too at conferences and online meetings to design the system and how it should progress. Next, please. So that was just to give you an indication. It's continually evolving. This slide just shows a few of the aspects of GOON that I think have been particularly useful for the community. The top left is a map of the GOON membership. So the countries shaded in black are the location of members, and there's now over 900 from 105 countries involved in the network. One of the early aspects, outcomes of the work was to develop a data portal which shows where global assets are in place for measuring ocean acidification parameters. This is more like it's just to define metadata of what's being collected, who's collecting it, and it's been extremely useful for understanding where there are gaps in the system, and really it's a central focus for building the network into the future. One of the outcomes of that has been to develop capacity. In showing in the bottom left, it's just some examples, and I'll go into a little detail. I think that's been a particular success of GOON, and it's through direct training, mentoring, provision of equipment and communication. And of course, another key aspect of GOON, which is developing, is linking the science to societal needs, including input to the Sustainable Development Goal 14.3, which is one of the 10 targets for the Ocean Sustainable Development Goal that's specific to ocean acidification. There's another, many other aspects too, which I'm delivering to the community, both the science community and decision makers and the public. Next, please. One of the real, I think, key outcomes and benefits that we've gained from GOON is the development of regional hubs. They're collaborative hubs. You can see in the shaded areas around the countries, the geographic extent or rough geographic extent. They are really important for bringing together the community. So it focuses local knowledge and expertise in a region. It helps us connect to local communities, and it also helps us identify gaps and needs in those different regions. And so that's been critical for developing our training. Next, please. This is one example from some of the training that's occurred. So early career researchers and people from developing countries that are trying to build ocean acidification research have been involved, and so far over 500 scientists from 69 developing countries have taken part. There is the 695 is some are repeat participants, and you can see some of the organisations involved in supporting that. It's actually higher than that number. There's been more workshops in the last, since the figure was made in about a year ago. The colouring in there is the intensity of the colour is just an indication of the number of participants from each country. This has been really beneficial. It's helping to develop our network. I'm not sure if there are parallels in your needs, but certainly to get, there's a huge gap in observing in many of these developing countries. They just don't have the resources at present, or haven't had the resources and training to undertake the research, and this has really helped develop that or address that need. Next slide, please. And it hasn't just been a series of training courses and then people disappear. The training courses are actually held in the region normally. So volunteers from GOON will go to a region, say East Africa, and a bunch of countries for the East African or Africa will attend the training courses. And on top of that, there's a mentorship program which links early career researchers and other researchers that want some expert advice with experts in the community. That's been really important for developing collaborations, and it's helped to link those people that have been in training back into the whole network. And it's run by NOAA, one of our partners, with support from the GOON community. And I've also mentioned direct assistance, training workshops, but also the provision of some equipment to researchers where they hasn't existed before, so they can begin ocean acidification monitoring. It's quite basic equipment, but nevertheless, it's been really beneficial for a number of countries to start working on ocean acidification. Next, please. And of course, I've shown you a few aspects of the work that's happening in GOON. The website is very important for communicating with the members, and if you visit the website, you can get more information on implementation plans, what's happening, the description of the hubs, etc. And it's not just communicating with the community, though, it's really critical, and COAN has been very active in participating in major conferences like COP26, where there are a large number of events featuring ocean acidification. There's also other work. We have online meetings, including the Ocean Acidification Week, which just completed about a month ago and had over 600 participants, or close to 600 participants. Next, so there's a lot of work. It's still ongoing, and I just want to briefly mention a few things that are happening now. Next slide, please. Yeah, so out of the training workshops, we identified a need for a focused training facility in the Pacific to service the Pacific Islands and their needs. So the US have just recently funded a training at one of these centres, and some of the organisations involved are listed here. It's just starting. It's quite a nice development. Next slide. That's just one example of how the training is leading on. We're developing online courses to help people in their own time go back and review needs in the observing, including consistent measurement procedures, strategies for observing, how to manage the data and experimental design. And lastly, I just want to, the UN Decade of Oceans, next slide, please. The UN Decade of Ocean Science has just begun, and the GOAN has a program which has just been approved in that group to further develop ocean acidification research. It's called OARS, and if you go to the website down the bottom left of the figure, you can see some of the work that's being planned. It's just beginning. It includes taking the work that's been done on GOAN and identifying and implementing, or helping to implement, mitigation adaptation strategies, co-design of observing, increased understanding of biological impacts, and increased literacy within the public and decision makers. So there's a lot going on. It's continually evolving, and it's really due to the wonderful effort of all the volunteers and the many agencies that have supported GOAN. Last slide, please. So if you're interested in finding out more information, please visit the website, and if you want to join, you're very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the description of the GOAN program. And now we have the last talk before the coffee break from Marta Ottogalli and Seiful Ridway. And it's about the role of IMDOS in supporting the Gpml digital platform. This presentation will be shared by Marta and Seiful. So I guess Marta starts and then give the floor to Seiful. Marta, please.
Thank you very much for giving us the floor. So I will start introducing the role of IMDOS in supporting the Gpml digital platform. There has been already a few of the speakers mentioning and referring to the platform. So apologies. Okay, because I didn't have control. So before going into the detailed, short overview of the platform here, I'll be posting the link after I'm done presenting, so everyone can access that and get more information on the context of it. There's also one poster on the platform per se, so those are interested in learning more, please feel free to access those information. And if you're interested in knowing about the Gpml and how that can be joined, also I'll be sharing links for that. So going back to the presentation today, the Gpml digital platform aims to address marine litter and plastic pollution global challenges by integrating knowledge and data, by promoting unified approaches, establishing a common framework to develop and implement action plans and measure progress, and lastly, to enable enabling really the development of solutions by the various stakeholders involved. So this is a multi-stakeholder platform, and it's meant to allow stakeholders to coordinate on ad hoc and on a regular basis. So far, we have enabled stakeholders' engagement, connectivity, and collaboration, but also the coordination of action by first identifying a wide range of partners and synergies to avoid duplication of effort, which, as you will see in this domain, there is a lot happening, and there are many partners focusing on various aspects at a more granular scale and at a broader scale per se. So and also it has allowed through the pilot we have conducted, we have tried to understand how to best support through the platform per se the matchmaking functionalities of the various groups in collaboration with the stakeholder company. We have tried to identify with a small group of individuals and entities how to best recreate this coordination also in a digital setting. But the next steps are really to drive that coordination to informal groups of community or practices who can meet regularly and discuss on good practices and benchmark what's happening at a global, regional, national, and subnational scales to contribute to the overall community really work. There are three types of community or practices that we are considering supporting the creation of, and those include the geographic types, the topical, so that, as I said, can support really efforts at a regional, national, and eventually subnational scales on the various topics, more topical ones for domain experts from across the globe to come together and really drive coherent and co-develop solutions on the needs towards the elimination of marine litter and plastic pollution across the life cycle. And lastly, the cross-cutting teams that can instead include a wide range of additional coordination needed. Once those after the community of practice stage, we hope to achieve the creation of Center of Excellence, which would be instead formal entities responsible for establishing good practices, contributed to the data governance, and created technical links to the platform. And again, those could be of a regional nature, so a regional center, or a topical nature, so a research center that can have an active role in coordinating the effort and providing good standards of practice and guidance for the community at a larger scale. Additionally, thinking has been gone into how to support countries in their action plans development efforts through a creation of national source inventories. We're still at the very early stage in identifying the key steps needed for countries to support their not just the creation of action plans, but also reporting, implementation, and also update of it. And with this, I'll hand over to Saiful Ridwan, who will speak more about some of the work we have been doing so far on developing the platform and specifically on the data hub and with the data partners. So Saiful, over to you.
Thank you, Marta, and thank you, Stefano, for providing the mic. Good afternoon, good morning, good afternoon to everyone. So as Marta has mentioned, I will focus now on the data hub of the Gpml digital platform. Can we see the slide? Thank you. So the Gpml digital hub has been built using a platform, a system called ArcGIS Premium Hub, which allows the system to be built using advanced mapping layers as well as analytics. So the data hub itself consists of 6 main components. One is the maps and layers, essentially attempting to provide data sets using maps as well as layers, where the users can switch off and on layers based on thematic areas, as well as, of course, zoom into particular regional locations. The second part is the dashboard and analytics, which is essentially presenting data sets in terms of graphs, charts, and trends, as well as analytics or analysis of the data sets. The third component is the data catalog, essentially presenting data in a catalog format to allow easy way of users to search various data sets based, for example, on certain parameters or criteria like location, thematic area,
the date it was uploaded, the size, as well as the the licensing aspect, the terms of use of the data sets. Because when we do engage data sets, some data sets can be freely used, but there's also certain data set can be used only in certain conditions, and what acknowledgements needs to be used for using or further manipulating those data sets. So this has to be taken into account, and that is all provided through the data catalog. But essentially, the data catalog is to facilitate people to be able to access the data sets that are published through the Gpml Data Hub. The next component is the data content, which essentially is presenting data in repositories, resource repositories, for example, like repositories of technologies available for the marine litter issue, policies that have been developed for the area, as well as action plans, as well as, for example, action plans, projects, as well as financial resources or technical resources available in the world globally in addressing those areas, as well as including experts available in certain areas, as well as a repository of needs by certain member states around the world that they like to be supported on. The fifth component is the data story, which is essentially an attempt to provide data set in form of stories, providing narratives or context or meaning to those data sets. So data set doesn't just stand on its own, but we try to give meaning to it by giving stories or narratives to them. Lastly is the data communities component, which essentially providing a platform to allow communities engage, not just share data with us to be published through the Data Hub, but also be involved in validating or curating the data sets to ensure that what we publish through the Gpml Data Hub are validated or curated data. And UNEP cannot do this on its own. It has to be in partnership with various communities, or what as Martha mentioned earlier, centers of excellence. Thank you. Next slide, please. Just quickly giving some samples what we already have now on the digital data hub, operational Gpml risk and warning system. This has been published through collaboration with Habitat, universities, Ocean Cleanup, and DHI. Next slide, please. Tracking marine litter with the global ocean model. This has also been put or published through the Gpml Data Hub. Next one, please. Just one more example of marine litter hotspots. This has been published in collaboration with the Universal Leads, UN Habitat, Water and Leads, Wasteware, and then the UN University, as well as the spot. Thank you. Back to you, Stefano.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to you and to all the speakers that we have the chance to listen this morning. Now it's time for a short break, and then there is the discussion about the future of IMDOS and some critical questions that we would like to address and ask to the speakers and the panelists. So the break will, so we will be back at 20 to 10. So let's have this short break, and then let's go into the roundtable discussion at 10:40. So see you in 10 minutes.
Stefano, you are muted if you are talking.
Sorry. No. I was just sorting out the questions. Yes, time to start again, I guess. So, sorry. So now it's time for the discussion. The idea is to have 1 minute, about 1 minute time for each presenter to answer the questions, some major questions that may be useful to understand how to improve IMDOS, which is the topic, the major reasons of this section. So defining the future of IMDOS. So there are critical questions that may help to solve these questions. So the first questions that I would like to ask is what do you think, what role IMDOS should have or should play in a global landscape of entities addressing marine litter pollution? So what's the position IMDOS may play in the global landscape of entities addressing marine litter pollution? I will start with Denise, and then if she wants to say something.
Yes. Sure. Thank you so much, Stefano. I think, you know, the IMDOS is really, in some ways, while it's at early stages, I think it's also quite a great opportunity that this network can actually act as a consolidator. It can step into a leadership role globally and really provide a key center for collaboration and a nexus for creativity and for building a global network in a considered inclusive collaborator fashion. And I realize that there are certainly challenges, you know, not the least of which is funding, the fact that there are numerous activities underway in different areas of the world. But I do see that there is quite a strong nexus or center in terms of key global leaders engaging in this space. And I think that with support from some key international bodies and sort of growing some of those networks, I think there's really a fantastic opportunity to provide a really important role moving forward in terms of ocean observations. And I'll pause there to turn to the next person. Thanks, Stefano.
Yes, thank you very much for your comment. I will give the floor to the second person in my screen, so there is no specific order, I just follow my screen. So the second in my screen is Marta. Do you have any comment about this?
I think I'll just reiterate what was presented on before. I think coordination is key. The role that Imdos can play is in bringing all the different stakeholders together, especially to show how this topic is very much interlinked with other domains and how it's spread, the different actions are spread across the regions and countries. So I will pause here and let others add more, but I think that's key, especially for us.
Very good. Seiful, do you want to add something to what Marta said, or are you fine with that? No answer. I go further. Nikolai, what do you think is the challenge for IMDOS? I know that we already talked about this in the white papers in many other occasions, but this is a time to say something more.
Yeah, good question. Challenge, everything. Tell me what is easy. Tell me what is not challenge. I don't know. You know, I want to say that when we started this event, I never expected such feedback, such response, such participation. And I am totally totally amazed with the work that continues during this difficult time of pandemic, with major expeditions canceled, major observational networks disrupted. We all are very limited in communication, and this is amazing. And then I see how this UN Ocean Decade starts, this Clean Ocean Laboratory. I think they are in the process of trying to understand which way to go, how to do it, and in that sense, our event is in right place. So this is great opportunity for us to plug in this live process, and which I feel like, you know, it really gains some structure and some purpose. What is the main challenge? I think sustained funding. I see how many people are trying to contribute their parts to joint effort, and I see what miracle can do sustained funding of some groups. This is fantastic, and as one of the goals of organizers of this UN Ocean Decade is actually raising funding, not raising, well, raising and also linking potential funders to most important initiatives. So I think this is well, money is not everything, but money is very important for successful science. Thank you.
Welcome. Oh, who cannot say you're wrong? So the next one in my screen is Isobe-san. Please, if you have any comment.
Yeah, thank you very much, Stefano-san. So my expectation to the IMDOS is to act as the data center of the microplastic, ocean plastics. So you know the natural science, including the ocean plastic study, always based on the field data. But you know that the field data of the ocean plastic is not so large, including the abundance and the risk quantification of the risks. So we need a well-quantified data center is very highly required. And important thing is to update the guidelines. We now have some guideline for collecting the ocean plastics, but we have several guidelines over the world. So important thing is to synthesize the guideline and to update the guideline persistently. So if IMDOS work to do that, it will be very helpful for advancing our sciences on ocean plastics. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I definitely agree with that. How can it be like that? Now, in my list, in my screen, I just following that. Artur, what do you think are the challenges?
The challenges of that you mean faced by Imdos, or?
Yes.
So, you know, I think that the challenges are many, and then I'm gonna, you know, agree with what was said already before. One basic thing is definitely what Marta showed on that slide with a very busy network diagram. You know, it's just navigating the complex landscape of different actors, and even just navigating the actors that are interested in and engaged in the observations of marine litter, using, you know, traditional observing methods, but also the ever-growing number emerging new and innovative ways of observing. And then how do we, first of all, understand this landscape, map out who is doing what, and then on top of that, try and coordinate it? Because without coordination, as also Bronte pointed it out, without knowing who is measuring what and when and how, it's difficult to address the gaps, to know where we should focus on. How do we design the observing system to address the gaps and at the same time meet the needs of the stakeholders, which we need to continually reevaluate as well, because their needs are changing. You know, this I see a big challenge. I fully agree with Isobe-san, you know, international agreements on methods, at least for those indicators which we now are recommended for being feasible to be done on a global scale. This is a huge challenge which requires global coordination of, you know, of a group of experts that will be working under some sort of a global framework. These two things for sure. And the third one I would like to mention is making sure that all the data is not only free and openly accessible, but it really fulfills the FAIR standards, you know, that it's findable, available, interoperable, and reproducible. You know, for many branches of science, this is still not a given. So I think we need to promote this attitude of making the data fulfill the FAIR standards from day one. I'll stop here. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm mixing up a bit the schedule because I would like to ask these questions to Denise, the same question to Denise, because she needs a break. So I will ask her about the challenges, and then I'll get back to finish the list. Denise, what do you believe are the challenges for IMDOS?
Well, I think some of the big challenges really are around making sure that there's not duplication of efforts and making sure that there's that interoperability. And I think it's really important to ensure that various bodies of work and programs are as harmonized and consistent as possible. I think there's real value in also ensuring that the data that are being collected with an eye towards addressing the particular questions and making sure that the methods and the approaches are really suitable to address the major questions that are being sought. And so I think really focusing on some of that interoperability, the harmonization, and that collaboration, I think some of those are challenges in part. To be honest, there are so many efforts afoot these days. I'm sure every single person on the line here is invited to so many different meetings right now, and there's so many different partnerships and collaborations, which is a testimony to the increased global focus on this topic. I think sometimes that we get a little bit caught up, or we're sometimes stepping over one another, and the left hand doesn't always know what the right hand is doing. And so ensuring, you know, as Marta and others have talked about, ensuring that there's that central repository, that, you know, data are being collected consistently and yet appropriately to really address the various questions. You know, I also think that while there's been a lot of discussion about an international treaty, I think that if there are increased global efforts and international governance that is consistent and has strong standing, so is perhaps more enforceable, that sort of thing, I think that could lead to some substantial changes that would really benefit. And I do see that as quite a long-term challenge, moving towards some of the governance structures that will really help to frame and to utilize the data that are being collected by the numerous partners around the world, but hopefully in a unified and consolidated way. And I'll pause there. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I agree on what you said, especially I appreciate the idea that you mentioned the treaties, international treaties about this, which is probably really a challenge for the years to come, definitely. So we have to move from the local or regional, you know, we have problems. I mean, generally we have problems with local laws and enforcement. Going to global seems more complex, but it's definitely what we have to go. So from regional to global, and treaties are a very important part of a system like this, I guess. I mean, it's not up to us to sign the treaties, of course, but to provide the information to do that. So that's a very, very interesting point of view. Then I have to ask the question to Manuel. What do you believe will be the challenges and the position of IM and DOS in the general marine litter pollution problem?
Well, I will start from the last point, what is the position. And from my point of view, Imdos is really important in order to coordinate, as has been already mentioned, the international technical and policy-making elements that are necessary to actually make Imdos a reality. It's very challenging from the point of view that we need to merge substantially different data types coming from very diverse communities and following very different standards, which from my point of view is going to be one of the main challenges that Imdos is going to face. We have to manage to put all the available data together in order to, as has been already mentioned, identify what are the gaps in those data so that the community can work towards the completion, as well as to providing the technical means to make sure that they are monitored in the levels for the spatial and temporal scales that are required by the end users. The other aspect that I think is critically a problem, as has been being discussed recently, is the lack of proper regulations that are able to provide us what is the rule that we need to use to measure this type of contamination. So, for instance, in most countries, there are no particular legal baselines informing you about what it is the degree of contamination of one area based on the quantity of marine litter that is present. Some people say that just one single piece by X square meters should be representative, others have other quantities. And these type of things are very important to really address the objective of the United Nations of having a marine debris indicator that can be used for helping policymaking to address what is the status of the pollution, as well as what is the impact of mitigation measurements and control that can be put in place. If we are not able to elaborate this type of indexes, it's going to be very difficult to really be able to monitor the status and evolution of things on time. And this, from a point of view, is something that should be nurtured inside Imdos as a basic principle to provide useful information for the global community. And for me, those are the main impacts or problems, which also tackles the issue of standardization of the data. And because of the collection of data of marine litter has grown organically, there has not been a directing organization from the beginning telling everybody how to do it. There are many different types of information that are very difficult to assemble together. And there is a number of initiatives already working on this topic, but I think Imdos also should play a major role in this definition as the organization or entity or platform that should be able eventually to agglutinate all this data together. So for me, those are the three main aspects that could be changing in the future. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. And now a comment from someone who is not directly into marine litter problem, but has experience on observing systems. So that is Bronte. What do you think, Bronte, about this?
Well, I think you've summed up a lot of challenges, and including coordination, defining standards of measurement, and gathering that data. But there are other aspects of the work. I think you have to be careful with any new observing system that you bring everyone along, and that includes developing country researchers, and that may require capacity building effort. I think that's been that's very well received in various governments around the world. I think it's a very important aspect of what we've done, and it's helped us gain recognition and acknowledgement that this is a global problem, but it has a lot of local issues and impacts. And so I think this, is one area that you may want to consider. And the other thing that we found extremely beneficial is that there are a number of organisations around the world with different expertise. It might be in data management or, capacity building, but by coordinating efforts with them, it's been really beneficial, and it helps spread the cost. They also maintain their ability to get credit for what they're doing. And so that's been a really key ingredient of what we've done. And I think I'm sure there's many opportunities, perhaps even more in your organisation or developing observing system than we have. There's so much interest in marine debris. So I think those are all positives. And of course, citizen science is a huge way into government and policymakers. So, I think you've got so many opportunities. Managing will be difficult, and resourcing.
Okay, thank you very much for this useful comments. There are some questions from the attendees. One question is, we said that the approaches should be suitable to address the key questions. And then the people ask, what are the key questions? And answers, of course. We got this kind of questions many times. I mean, we know with the key question, the basic question is, to my point of view, is the big question is, how can we stop this plague? Because we are talking about plastic pollution is a plague that affects all the world. So the big question is, how can we stop it? And we work in that direction. I mean, everything, all of us, I'm DOS and any scientist and volunteer and policymaker, stakeholders go into this direction. How can we stop this plague? The question to us, and that I'm going to ask you now from the public to you, is what are the key questions that can be addressed by an observing system like this? And so I will start with, and so Denise has gone, so in my screen, the first one is Nikolai. Do you have any comment about this? Of course, it's we probably may need a dedicated workshop just on this,
Absolutely. Yeah. Again, it feels more like a battle. This front line is moving continuously. I think we are still discovering new impacts of marine debris. For example, just recently our paper was accepted by Nature, in which we demonstrate that accumulation of debris in the garbage patch actually created what we call a neopelagic floating ecosystem. Surprisingly, richness of alien coastal species in the pelagic ocean is now greater than richness of natural pelagic species. And this is something new, and this demonstrates that we still don't know all impacts. We don't know what's going on in the water column. Can we expect some spills from the interior of the ocean, for example? I think we are looking into a major breakthrough in remote sensing of marine litter, and it will be not necessarily in the direction where remote sensing is moving now. But I don't know. Well, I cannot formulate a short list of specific questions, but I know that we will know the moment when system becomes to some operational status. And that will be when we will start reading many publications, joint analysis of remote sensing and in situ observations and modeling, all clicking together, all working together. Thank you.
Good. Isobe-san, do you have any idea about this? Any comment about the key questions for IMDOS to address?
So my expectation is that, my point is that, so we have to, I expect IMDS to lead the development of new technology for observing system available for developing countries, because so much marine debris generated in developing countries, not the developed countries, but you know that the laboratory in developing country is generally not so rich in comparison with laboratory in developed countries. So, for example, so it is very difficult to, for example, purchase the FTIR or micro FTIR, some expensive equipment required for measuring the ocean plastics. This is one of the bottleneck to gather the huge amount of the data set from the oceans. So if we can develop the new technology in the framework of IMODS and available for the developing country, for example, the identification of the plastic by using the deep learning, or I'm not sure, but such kind of the new technology will help us to increase the huge data set. If IMODS contributes to lead such kinds of the innovation of the development of the new technology, it is very helpful for this science. Thank you. I'll back to Stefan.
Yeah, thank you very much. Very useful contribution. And well, we can go on asking everybody about, or just give, go on to other questions. But first of all, I would like to have the comments from Artur and then Marta. Please, Artur, what's your opinion about the key challenges? Sorry, about the key questions. I have always challenges for you.
Yeah, I'll try to be brief. So, you know, just a caveat, I'm not a marine litter expert, but from what I understand, and I remember what Thomas Maes said on Wednesday, you know, we cannot close the plastics budget. If we cannot account for where 90% of that is going in the ocean, then I think that's a key scientific question that we as people interested in the observing system want to answer. You know, what is the life cycle of plastics in the ocean? What happens? I think that is very important scientific or overarching scientific gap that needs to be answered. And then, you know, we have analogies from the carbon as well. Well, basically what drives the observing system design for carbon, whether it's dissolved organic, whether it's particulate, whether it's in the coastal open oceans, we want to close the carbon budget. And then I remember, you know, Francois mentioning the fact that what we need for marine litter is an equivalent of an IPCC assessment that is for climate. So I think this is where we need to get going. But first, we need to be far better able to close and narrow down the budget constraints. Thanks.
Yeah, I agree. Sorry, my phone phones exactly when it shouldn't. And it came to my mind a concept, an idea. And when you mentioned the carbon, the IPCC, and we definitely, humans have a problem with carbon. I mean, plastic is carbon. So we have, as a humankind, we have difficulties to manage carbon. That's a kind of comment. It can be CO2, but also polymers are made of carbon. So we probably find an agreement with the carbon cycle sometimes in our life. That's just a comment from me. And then I think if Marta wants to say a few words.
Yeah, I think I can be quite brief because many have mentioned and we're now very much aligned with the comments. Sorry for the background noise. But what I think needs to be stressed is that data say cannot be seen as a standalone effort. We have seen the issues with fragmentation. I think data has to serve identification of gaps to strengthen the science policy interlinkages, but also to enable and support action and measure the effectiveness of such action. So I think the direction of what data is serving for and how it can best suit the needs of the community, and especially the decision makers who will be driving their agendas, also with the support of the data collected, is really important, and should really help the community to focus on and coordinate their efforts on the key questions per se, on the domains and the actions that need to be undertaken.
Thank you very much. Now, before going to the final part of this discussion, that will be again for panelists, and I will leave the floor for some questions from the audience. Just very brief. I see a comment from me.
Stefano,
Yeah.
Doste is on the line now, so if he wants to take the floor, it's a good time, I think.
For her or for me?
For her.
Okay, please go.
Him, I think. So Doste, you can turn on your camera and turn on your mic if you want. You're muted right now.
Yeah.
Okay. I lost connection when I clicked on some bottom. Sorry, I'm back. So thank you very much for this really interesting discussion. So I would like to connect to the questions I put in the Q&A box here. So regarding the scope of Imdos, I think it's important. I mean, you, Stefano, you mentioned the overarching goal of reducing marine plastic and solving the problem. So I would challenge that and say, well, it's probably really what we would like to do, but probably the Imdos mandate, if you like, is probably to provide the data and the information to policymakers. So if, instance, they are taking some measures to reduce plastic, we can have an observing system in place that can assess how effective that was. Very much similar to what Artur mentioned of IPCC report, that, you know, IPCC just conveys the science to the policymakers, and we just saw that in COP in Glasgow, and that leads into a policy process. And I think to be clear on what the aim and the mandate of Imdos is very important. So that was my take on that. And I think there were some really good big questions that have been raised, but having a system, I think, that can on kind of regular basis provide some updates on the marine plastic cycle. And in this case, we are probably in a phase where we don't really know the basics. As Artur mentioned, 90% of the plastic that goes into the ocean, we don't really know where it is. So we are starting at a very low level, I would assume. I would like to ask you, Bronte, on the GOA-ON comparison, which I think is a really good comparison. And my understanding from GOA-ON is that GOA-ON is looking very much on the observations of ocean acidification and the carbonate system that goes into that, but not so much on the impact on ecosystems because of ocean acidification, but that is done and coordinated by a slightly different group. And I think this is something also when it comes to the mandate of Imdos, we have the option, I think, to take either route or maybe do both or one or the other. So maybe some comments from you, Bronte, on how that had worked on the ocean acidification community, if that has been positive or a negative, and what advice you would give to the development of Imdos in that regard. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Okay, thank you very much. So, few words from Bronte, just because he was
Thanks.
called upon.
Thanks, Tosta. Yeah, I think the go-on experience, it's been an evolution. So we first of all needed to start to implement ocean acidification measurements, and the biological impacts work is evolving. And there's a biological working group, the OARS program, which is in the UN decade, is going to have more of a focus on understanding biological impacts and getting that message out. So, and you know, a key aspect of go-on, which I've mentioned in the discussions earlier, is that linking with other programs. So you don't have to be the big dog and tell everyone what to do. You can link with people and coordinate and get a hell of a lot more out of your program and share the responsibilities and effort. And it's a multiplier. It will be a hell of a lot more valuable than just trying to do everything yourself. And so there are different aspects that different communities will work with. And in Go-on's example, we're very happy to work with Marine Biodiversity Observing Network and other groups that are looking at, you know, changing stresses on marine life. And there's other programs too. You have an opportunity here to work with the other groups, not just to isolate yourself as a marine debris observing network, but there are many other multi-stressors in the ocean that are being looked at now through the Ocean Decade and other programs. So I think it's a great opportunity to coordinate with those, and you'll find that the effort gets spread, and the it's a multiplier for the value of everyone. It's a great benefit, I think, for ocean science.
Okay, thank you very much for the comments. And so I send the question to the panelists, the question from Toste. Who wants to answer, Toste? I have a comment about before giving you the microphone to say your comment. My comment is IMDOS has the potential to give numbers to decisions. I mean, that's my point of view. And that's the answer I give to your questions. The panelists, please. Who wants to answer?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yes.
Yes.
It's not clear, yes.
Toste, do you want to say it again?
Well, I think there was more a comment on defining the mandate of an Imdos as we move on. To be clear about that, you know, Mr. Stefano mentioned that we want to stop plastic pollution, which I think could be an outcome, but it's probably not the mandate to drive that in a way. And I mean, it was also the question I asked to you, will Imdos look at the distribution and closing the plastic budget, if you like? Or it will also take a step and coordinate efforts that look at the impact on marine ecosystems. I think just a little bit of discussion on mandate for an Imdos would be really interesting to hear your opinions on that.
Yeah, well, if I can, Stefano?
Yes, please.
Yes, from my point of view, I think the mandate from Imdos can be driven directly or extracted from the UN Ocean Decade Sustainability Objective. And the mandate itself from UN is to generate a marine debris index. And for me, this is probably the ultimate objective from the technical point of view that Imdos can achieve, is to really provide a global index of marine litter contamination / pollution that can be used by policymakers to really, as you have well said, assess the impact of mitigation measurements, as well as to report on the current status of the things. Nevertheless, I think we have also to pinpoint to policymakers what are the main mechanisms and drivers of this pollution, so they can effectively put in place rules and methods to mitigate the problem, which means that Imdos should also be able to report on sources of marine litter, we already know quite well some of them, but as a lot of plastic is still missing, as we have said, there might be other strategic objectives, other strategic sources that we should consider also to support this mismanagement of the plastic litter. I don't think the objective of Imdos by itself should be to reinforce a reduction of the plastic policy, rather than give the tools to the people that needs to take this type of decisions to really address this problem. But of course, this is again, it's my personal view.
Any brief comment or answer?
Yeah, Nikolai, Stefano?
Yes,
yeah, I second previous speakers. I think, you know, we are not going in Imdos. We are not going to harvest marine debris, to harvest plastic. We are going to provide informational support for operations, for mitigation. So we don't really solve the problem, but we support activities and we provide information that supports solution of this problem. And in that sense, we participate. We are participants in search for these solutions.
Good. And now time is getting tight, so I'm sorry if I cut someone. The very last questions before the conclusions from Nikolai is very, very briefly, what is the most important step forward for us? Any suggestion, or if not, we have get back on schedule. So I give the floor to Nikolai for the final remarks.
Thank you, Stefano.
Yes, please.
Okay. Let's see. Just one sec. Okay, sharing screen. In fact, this your question about most important step, it kind of resonates with what I'm going to say. Okay, so this is just a snapshot again of our activity over 3 days, 3 sessions, large number of participants, excellent posters, presentations, discussions, partnership with 2 parallel events. We want to really express our thanks to Mercator Ocean and GEO Blue Planet, who provided, as you experienced, fantastic support, logistical, technical support. Question that, and during these days, what these days revealed is that problem of marine debris, first of all, it attracts more and more people. We are far from saturation. We are a growing community. And we also reported to each other and discussed very good, significant recent progress in all aspects of research and technology, addressing observations of marine debris of different types. Still, we all agreed that comprehensive observing system is still needed. We need higher level of integration. We need to fill in remaining gaps in the knowledge, and we need to also develop products that will support mitigating measures. And in that sense, this UN Ocean Decade is an excellent opportunity for us to step forward and to push forward establishment of Imdos. What does it mean? What is our next step? We discussed this several times among organizers, and we feel that most important is that this discussion continues beyond our event. So we want to make sure that at the end of this event, we create a door that we will be using to continue discussing these important questions. So as a part of this plan, we will maintain our event webpage and modify it as needed for as long as it is needed. In the next 10 days or a little bit longer, posters will remain available on Miro. So please, if you didn't have a chance, please go and feedback to your colleagues. After the end of November, we will post copies of posters and recordings of all sessions on the same web page. We will use your registration as a start of a new mailing list. Of course, if you don't like it anytime, you can unsubscribe. Organizers, probably next week, organizers of this event will sit together on virtual chairs and produce some kind of concluding document that we will also share with you. And this document will provide more details about the outcome of this event. Then next, what we suggest is that during this event, there were large number of participants who revealed, who expressed particular interest and who revealed great progress in tasks very relevant to implementation of Imdos. We suggest that organizers will reach out to these key people to form active, functional core group, and this group then will take from this event and will continue discussion on the future practical steps. These practical steps include, but are not limited to, for example, discussion and preparation of proposal to UN Ocean Decade for endorsement of Imdos as a UN program. For that, we have closed deadline, but if we decide to move slower, they're going to have such opportunities every 6 months. Then we feel that we need to, right now Imdos is a concept, is an idea. And we feel that it would be great to give this name to some sort of scientific entity. So we will discuss formation of working group, and we need to decide the umbrella for this working group. And we need to have two levels. One is really active core, and then network of much broader participants. This will help us hopefully to straighten communication so that information circulates much easier. We avoid duplications. We find similar activities. We exchange experiences, and building. Part of this discussion will be how to use existing and emerging successful projects, groups, initiatives to build on them this Imdos as a bigger activity. Here I listed some names that surfaced during our event, but this is totally not a full list. On some slides, you saw many more potential contributors and participants. So we look forward to continue working with you to develop what we started during these 2-3 days into the future. And we will inform you on the progress. And in the meantime, if you have any questions, any ideas, any initiatives, please use Audrey Hasson's email or any of organizers to provide us with your suggestions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nikolai. It was a nice talk. I think our time has finished just now as a schedule. I'm impressed. Thank you very much, everybody. I think I have to close this section. And thanks to speakers, organizers, and listeners, and Audrey, and Mercator and Blue Ocean and everybody who did it, made this event a success. Thank you very much.